It's been a while since I last made an MBA video, and in my past videos, I always kind of share all the positive experience I had from studying my 2 years of MBA in the US. And indeed, there were a ton of positive experience in those 2 years. But the truth is, you have to always look at two sides of a coin before making any major decisions. So this time around, I'm going to share what people typically do not talk about, the not so good experiences and the harsh truth of studying an MBA in the US, especially as an international student. If you're new, my name is Chen. I come from Singapore. I am a Cornell Johnson MBA graduate, currently working in big tech. So first of all, the cohort may not be as tight-knit as what people may imagine or as advertised. Yes, being a cohort with a small MBA class size, you typically would expect the cohort to be really tight-knit, whereby typically you expect to hang out with everyone in the class. I would say that this is right to a certain extent, whereby in the first semester, especially during orientation, you kind of have more opportunities to get to know people within your cohort, whereby you kind of gradually recognize almost everyone in the cohort and know that person exists, I would say. But the truth is, over time, people tend to hang out with classmates with the same or similar background. For instance, you realize that if you are an international student, the only people that you will end up be hanging out with are the international students, or most likely people who come from the same country as you. And you will also see Americans hang out with Americans. So that will end up typically be the case most of the time. And honestly, I wouldn't say I'm really surprised by it. I mean, it's human nature for people to gravitate towards people of similar background and culture. But I do say that I was a bit disappointed by this aspect of MBA because I was really envisioning this tiny cohort whereby everyone hang out with one another. So one thing I would say is that manage your expectation of the level of tight-knit that you will be experiencing coming into the MBA. Do not expect this scenario whereby everyone will be hanging out with each other, you will be friends with a lot of people. This is typically not really the case. The second point is recruiting is way harder than you ever imagined, way harder. I cannot emphasize this enough. I mean that this point is more so for international students because our natural pool of available companies are so much smaller than American students. But even for American students included, I would say that recruiting turned out to be way harder and way more stressful than anyone would have imagined coming to the MBA. The amount of work, the amount of stress level, the amount of preparation and grind that you have to go through to secure a job offer, to secure an internship offer is really something that you can only understand when you are actually in the weeds of doing those activities. Especially for international students, when you see your American classmates getting tons of interview invites every week and you are sitting over there it's late February of the spring semester and you have not received a single interview invite. The level of stress level at that point in time can be really daunting to anyone. Before I started my MBA, I always thought to myself that I would have no issue securing a job offer or an internship offer. And over time, as months pass, as the grind continues, your confidence level kind of start to diminish, whereby you will kind of start questioning yourself, will I really get a job offer? Will I end up being unemployed? I think this kind of self-doubt will at some point occur to every MBA candidate. It's kind of a process that we have to go through. But I think that the lesson that I learned is that be prepared to go through this tough period because recruiting is meant to be hard. It's meant to be stressful. If not, everyone would have been walking out of the door with an offer from MBB, from Goldman Sachs. The third thing is that 80% of the classes that you attend are honestly not that useful and most likely we will not apply much of those knowledge post-MBA. I don't think this is a point that is necessarily surprising, but I think it's worth mentioning so that people can manage their expectations. If you're someone who is coming to an MBA to mainly get the knowledge from class curriculum and potentially apply that to your future job. I mean, I'm sorry to break the news to you that you'll most likely only be able to apply a small percentage of those knowledge in your future career. Yeah, many of the classes that you learn during MBA are cool, but the truth is, when you actually set foot into the workforce, none of that actually matters, right? You'll be the most junior person in the company. You have to learn everything from scratch, learn the new system and processes. So all the theory that you learn from classes are honestly not that applicable to your future job. I would say though, there are a few classes which are relatively more useful for me, especially for someone going into the tech space. These are finance, operations, SQL, and data analytics. I think getting the foundation knowledge of these 4 areas are pretty useful going to your job, but I wouldn't call them as critical because you can always learn on the job as you go. The 4th point is group projects can get really annoying. So during MBA, you will almost in every class be asked to work in groups and do group projects or group presentations. I mean, this is kind of a team in the business school, right? Working in big groups, giving corporate level presentations. These projects typically are weighted pretty heavily on your grades, so you kind of have to take them seriously. But the truth is, the quality of your group is pretty much luck dependent most of the times. Especially in the initial phases of your MBA, many of these groups are kind of randomized, and you don't really have a fixed group of classmates that you are familiar with. It will be pretty common to have groupmates who do not deliver their fair share of work, be it due to they simply do not care, they are busy recruiting, or they just flat out have a low quality of work. And these situations can honestly be pretty stressful, and you'll kind of result in you having to put in extra time to cover their work in order to get things done. You may have to put in extra time, burn midnight oil, and even so, your grades can be adversely impacted by these situations. So I fortunately was pretty lucky in terms of the group members that I was teamed up with. Most of them are pretty solid and responsible, but I have heard many horror stories of my other classmates who have to basically carry the project by themselves because their groupmates simply do not care. The 5th point is the cost of studying MBA. So studying MBA in the US is really expensive. The average school fees these days in a top MBA program in the US is typically about 70 to 80k a year, and that basically equates to a total of about 200k of expenses over the span of 2 years if you factor things like accommodation, living expenses, and travel. And many of these MBA loans, especially for international students, the interest rate are 7 to 8%. So eventually you're ending up be paying way more than the say 160k loan that you borrowed. Before making the decision to take up an MBA, I'll really think through whether the dollar investment that you're making is worthwhile based on the goal you have coming into an MBA. Do proper research on what your desired post-MBA job will be paying you. Do a simple ROI analysis, understand what your interest rate is, and how many years it will take for you to pay off your MBA loans, and really make a sound decision on whether this whole thing makes financial sense for you. I think most people entering a top MBA program, they would have done proper research in this area, but I have seen classmates who kind of put themselves in a pretty tough financial situation. This video is mostly dedicated to prospective students, especially prospective international students who is thinking of studying MBA in the US. And by no means I want to discourage anyone from pursuing an MBA. I mean, I personally had an awesome experience in the 2 years at Cornell Johnson. But I think the meta point is set your expectation right before coming into the program. It will not be a bed of roses. You will be faced with challenges and things that you do not enjoy, or even at times question a decision of taking up an MBA. This basically happened to almost everyone at some point. It's important to be prepared for such situations early and not be caught in a surprise like I kind of did. And make sure to have a strong support system from your family, friends, and classmates. And make sure to share how you are feeling to other people as you go through the process. Maybe you'll realize that you are not the only one who is facing some of the difficulties. Thanks everyone for watching. All the best. Make sure to like, subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next video.